My name's Tiana Conyers. I'm a freelance illustrator. I've been freelancing since like 2015. I'm a student at UNO. I'm studying art and Spanish, and super excited to be here. I'm not sure what else to say. Uh, yeah,
All
that's
good.
good.
And then I believe, is it Allegra next? Yes, it's
Yeah,
Allegra
I think.
next.
Hi, yeah, my name's Allegra Hangen. I use she, her pronouns, and I am an multimedia interdisciplinary artist. I do a lot of like video installation work. I just had a show kind of wrap up it was at the Amplify Arts offices on 13th Street. And it was for my final project at the union. I was a union fellow this past year. And I think that's all I want to share.
That's good.
Thanks, guys. I'm super happy to be here too.
And then I believe it's Jody next.
Hi, I'm Jody Boyer. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm an artist and arts educator, and I have 4 different professional roles. I teach as an adjunct instructor at UNO. I teach art in a middle school. I volunteer as a nonprofit collaborative leader with another artist in town for the Nebraska Art Teachers Association. And I also am a practicing artist. So I have a lot of hats. And I'm also super excited to be here and see people.
Then we have, last but not least, certainly not least, Ty and Nared.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So as Kana mentioned, my name is Ty, pronoun she, her, hers. I am one of the co-owners of Meraki Montessori. We are a Montessori-inspired wooden toy company. I do a lot of the toy designs and all of our creative content, and I'm excited to be here and then show you some more things about us later.
Awesome. So we're actually going to move on to the showcase. And for attendees who don't know, we're going to have a showcase of about 5 to 10 minutes, however much each of them want to take, of them sort of showing off their own artistic practice and whatever else they feel is relevant. And then after each person has their showcase time, we'll then move on to open discussion with some prompts that we've all pre-prepared. And then our first showcase will actually be from Tiana. Think you're still muted.
I'm going to share my screen now. All right. All right, can y'all see my slide?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. All right, so my name's Tiana. Like I said, I'm a freelance illustrator, full-time student. It's a little bit about me. Like I introduced myself earlier already, but I'm currently junior, senior-ish here at UNO. Like I said, I've been freelance illustrating since like 2015. I graduated high school in 2016, so I got started in my career very early on. I kind of realized kind of late in high school, but early in life, I guess, that art is kind of the way I want to go. And my art, more specifically, I do digital media or digital illustrations. So I use like graphics tablet to create my illustrations and programs like Photoshop, raster, and vector programs. So first, I wanted to show some of the illustrations I did for We Thrive in Middle Spaces, which was a series of 5 billboards that were up across North Omaha this August and September. We Thrive in Middle Spaces was a billboard series featuring Black, Indigenous, and people of color, LGBTQIA, Two-Spirit, plus Omahans or Nebraskans. And it was my first major project I've done, period, but also in Nebraska. And I was very, very, very happy and proud to do it with the union. If y'all aren't aware, I used to be a teaching artist / classroom assistant. I was kind of my first like art job where I got to do that and work with middle school students here at the union. And it was super awesome because I had left that job early on in November, and I got to come back this year and do this project with them, my first major project. So it was really kind of full circle and very humbling. These are some of the illustrations I did for the series. It was a really, really, really fun project. And for those who got to see it, it was definitely very impactful for me. So I have little 2020 year in review, year and some change in review for myself. Kind of want to go over some of the stuff I've done. So like I said, I left my job at the union in November. I started my job at the Creative Production Lab in UNO Library. If y'all know, we all know what the Chris Library is. But I started working there. And here I have some like stuff I made. My very first task was to make some Baby Yoda and Mandalorian stickers. So here's some that I made for the Creative Production Lab. And that was kind of like just January. February, I had some artwork that went viral on social media, and that was kind of my first ever experience with, the internet actually working in my favor in some capacity. Because oftentimes, I feel like creators will put their stuff on the internet, and it kind of, so to speak, goes nowhere. We see it, our friends see it, and people see it, but it was getting a lot of traction, and still does to this day. And that was my very first experience with that. That was something really like new and eye-opening for me. And in January through March-ish, I opened my online store. So I currently sell prints, stickers, cards, coloring book pages, drawing activities, stuff I print from home, all from my online store. I fill all the orders myself. Here's some pictures of some of the stuff I sell, mostly like stickers, a lot of like really fun stuff where it's like either fan work or it's like original illustrations. But yep, I fill all that myself. I've been doing that for a couple of months, and it's been surprisingly, it didn't start off very well, but it's gotten like very, it's been like a great way to like find that I have like support, and people who want to support me are able to gain something from me, i.e. like prints or whatever they purchase, while also supporting me on my art career. So that's like something new and very fun. It's very different from what I've done in the past, where I've kind of just done events and sold materials at, put up a little table and sold materials and sold my art there. This summer, this summer, I actually, through the power of social media again and Twitter and among other things, was able to crowdfund money for an iPad. As a digital creator, iPads, if people are familiar, they came out with the new Apple Pencil. And so people are able to essentially on the go, wherever you take your iPad, draw. And a goal of mine in life has always been to get an iPad. And I kind of just voiced that on social media, like, oh, I really want to get one day. And to my surprise, and I'm sure everybody else's, people actually started kind of donating and like helping me raise money for that. And in about a week, in 8 days, I was able to have enough money to purchase one. So that was a huge milestone, I guess, in my career. And especially for such a wacky, for lack of better words, year, really awesome and humbling to receive. And like I mentioned before, we got Middle Spaces, the project I did, which was during the summer and super eye-opening and a really amazing project to be a part of. Speaking of Middle Spaces, I was actually nominated for OEAA award, or the project itself was the Omaha Entertainment Arts Award. And a goal of mine was always to be nominated for an award. I've been doing art since I was in high school, and I never really saw that as something that I could receive, just because my work never really was that large or that public to the point where I felt like my work would be acknowledged in that way. So it's been like, again, like very humbling and very exciting to be nominated in such an amazing category nonetheless. But there's that. I received the Amplify Arts micro grant this year, which is really awesome. I'd never, ever applied for a grant before. And I thought that was like super hard to do and like maybe impossible, but it was actually very easy. Amplify Arts was very, very accommodating and very like just really awesome working with them and being able to receive this micro grant. Super proud to be able to be amongst people who received one. I also received the IB Black Girl Small Business Grant, which again was like a milestone for me in such short amount of months, but very like humbling, just because my business, I've been doing commissions and art for a couple of years, but to be able to acknowledge as a business worthy of receiving grants was really exciting, and I really appreciated that. And it really did help bolster my online art and my small business, and my online shop altogether. This year has also offered the opportunity to do some artwork for a comic publisher. I won't name the publisher just because the thing didn't really work out, just because I'm a student and I don't really have the time to be illustrating a comic. But that was really exciting for me, just because I've always wanted to do work in comics. It's been a goal of mine. So to be offered that at this point in my life was like very exciting. It very much felt like something that I wouldn't be able to do until I was like decades down the line. Oh, and also my last bullet point, my first comic I've done. So I didn't do the comic myself. I should probably better explain. I was offered to do a comic cover, or a variant cover for a comic called Ignition, issue 2, and it's a Kickstarter project. And I was really excited to do that because, again, my first time ever doing kind of any official comic work. And it was a very like a small product Kickstarter, but it was very exciting. This year also, in October, there's the theme or the art prompt event of Black or Inktober that a lot of people have been doing. And then this year, a lot of Black artists on the internet start to do Blacktober, where they we kind of started creating artwork of our favorite like series, our favorite or our own characters, whatever our own art, but like our own interpretation of these characters. So I was able to do this all throughout the month of October and was very exhausted because there's a new prompt every day. And I tried my best to do up to 30. I did not, but it was really fun to do. And I have a whole lot of work to show for that. So that's like was super exciting to do, especially with such a slow paced year and so been so difficult getting work out. Here's some of my favorite art pieces of mine. This is from like 2019 and 2020, but these are some of my favorite works. I could kind of recall off the top of my head, all for very different reasons. But like I said, I'm a freelance illustrator. These are some of my favorite works I've done so far. But thanks for listening, and I'm really happy to be a part of this discussion. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you so much, Tiana. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to do a very quiet clap, but I don't want to mess up the mic or hurt people's ears. And then I believe we are next with Allegra. If you want to share your screen when you're ready.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Is this good? Yeah, cool. And you can hear me too. Well, yeah, of course you can hear me if you just responded to that. Thank you, guys. So I'm really just going to focus on the show that I actually had up just for 2 weeks this month through Amplify Arts. Like I mentioned in my introduction, I was lucky enough to be one of the 2020 Inside Out Fellows at the Union this year. And that was a really, really amazing experience, even though, excuse me, it wasn't the classic fellowship experience that we would be expecting. I was still able to have a studio space that really allowed me to move into new ways of making. So like I mentioned before, I studied photography. I didn't mention that before, but I usually work in video and photography. And I started studying photography in Boston at the Art Institute of Boston. It's now called Leslie Art and Design. I started there in 2011 and graduated in 2014. And that kind of background in photography really allowed me to start working in video in a really interesting way. I thought of video usually as just like a moving image, right? I think like sometimes when we say that, we don't really think about those words, but I would think of like a still image, but just having like the kind of characters or whatever objects within that image were moving around. And so I've really only worked with image-based kind of processes. And so this year I was able to actually start working with plaster and sculpture, I guess we could call it, just making actual like 3-dimensional structures. So this project was based around the Trans-Mississippi Exposition that happened in Omaha in 1898. And this was like one of the classic World's Fairs that was happening around the world at the time. But what was really interesting to me in kind of researching this, this exposition was that it was all made to be torn down easily. Let's see if I can, here's another install shot. So this idea of like building these grand, large, elegant looking buildings out of really cheap materials like plaster, which is why I was working with plaster, with the intention to tear them down was very, very interesting to me. It was kind of like a metaphor for a lot of our culture in general, where we want to kind of like impress, but there's a lot of context and substance kind of lacking underneath, right? So with the Union Fellowship, there's a experiential learning component to the fellowship where each artist with another institution in Omaha. I was partnered with the Durham and was able to kind of just excavate their lives and really research in that way, image-based. I wonder if I can, oh, this is of how you can sort of see the video projection being reflected in the mirror. Anyway, I'm gonna try like to not talk too much, but there's kind of a lot that I want to say about this show. Anyway, so like I said, it was the transmissive position that I was really focusing on, and I kind of related it to this whole situation that we're in this year of removing problematic monuments and really starting to question like what we're making a monument for and what we decide to kind of uplift in this monumentalized way. These buildings, like I said, were all made of plaster, so they could be destroyed. This lagoon was man-made. This is in present-day Kuntz Park in North Omaha. Actually, if you see the bridge in the middle of the lagoon, that would be Florence Boulevard now. And so, like I said, I was able to go through the Durham's archives, at least digitally, because of COVID. I was able to go in like once and get really excited about the archive and then not be able to actually access it physically. But they do have a lot of really great resources already digitized on their website. So yeah, I don't really want to get too deep into like all of the concepts with it, I guess, but just the fact that these things looked really, the buildings and the whole grounds themselves looked very grandiose and very stately, but I feel like if you were to lean against a wall or something a little too hard, it would all kind of just fall down. And I really loved that metaphor as well, you know. Here's some more install shots. I was also able to work with paint, which I don't normally do at all. I started working with spray paint and scraping away layers. Something that's really important to me with a lot of erasure and removing. I mean, it goes back again to the situation that we're in right now with removing monuments. Like kind of taking the power back against these like oppressive kind of government imposed things, and the people can actually take the power back in this act of removing something, right? Yeah, so I think that's where I'll end here. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the historical tie-in with Omaha. I didn't actually expect that because when I looked up your work, I didn't see that immediately, but I really enjoyed that. And it was really, I really just liked that input that you brought in analyzing your art and providing the reason. I really like that. And then I believe we have Jody next. When you're ready, you can share your screen.
Okay, I'm just gonna get your faces up because I always hate talking to a blank screen. It's very scary. Okay, hi. I have something I'm gonna read and then I'm gonna talk a little bit more freeform because I tend to get a little off track if I don't have some guidance. So you guys can all see my website, right? Yes, okay, cool. So I have been making work for roughly 22 years. And as an artist, my work varies in process, medium, and concept, but I am first a researcher of ideas. My practice grapples with the liminal space between science and art, with collective and individual memory, cinema, the photograph, and a sense of place. I value experimentation and learning from failure. I have a half dozen experiments running in my studio at a given time. I value the process of finding my way. And I'll stop there for a second to kind of talk about this website. So this website kind of shows work going back all the way to 2000, and I won't show too much of it, but some of my early work explored the idea of what makes a photograph real versus imagined. And like you, Allegra, I was really interested in historic photographs, but from a personal level. So this body of work was generated all from found movies that people had sold at garage sales that I had collected in my hometown. And then I have a lot of different bodies of work that use material processes and techniques differently. For a long time, my spouse and artistic partner and I did installations together. And I have dabbled in community-based performance, performance for photography, data collection as art making. And then in the last 9 years, my work has become much more object-based. So I have a series of work that I call Forest for the Trees, which there's only 3 of them here. But I have made about 275 of these pieces, and it's just kind of like an ongoing meditation on the shared metaphoric and literal forest that we all kind of have around us and how we negotiate our relationships with the natural world in some way. And I've done some residencies that harkened back to my early work, exploring the nature of photography as a scientific medium and whether or not it has veracity or whether there's truth in a photographic image. And so these are some experimental cyanotypes that I produced while I was an artist in residence at the Cedar Point Biological Station. But what I want to jump to is my Instagram, because it's so much easier for me to just share this for 2020 than make a PowerPoint, so that I can talk about my next sentence. My recent work focuses on care, domesticity, and our shared human grief from climate change, the pandemic, and the issues of 2020, where we are finally beginning to truly have public dialogue about our colonial and racist history in this country. And my pedagogy parallels my teaching. So I'm just going to jump over to my teaching for a second. I teach in a middle school at 46th and Center. It's the largest middle school in the state of Nebraska. We have roughly 1,200 students. And we are currently, I haven't read the data for today, but the zip codes that feed to my school are zip codes that have some of the highest COVID rates in the state. My students are predominantly Black and Brown, and my students are predominantly living in poverty. And so when we, I also, let me flip over to the other thing I do. I teach adjunct in the School of Arts at UNO. So I have a lot of different identities, but I think in the pandemic, my work has been focused mostly on really grappling with what's been happening in the world around me. And so I'll go back to March 18th. Where is March 18th? So where is March 18th? Where are you? There you are. Okay, so March 18th, the decision was made that, you know, we would be 100% remote. I wouldn't be able to see my students anymore. I wouldn't be able to live teach my students. And I had to deliver lessons asynchronously, you know, for 2.5 months and try to be the support for my students that I could be in my classroom. And so I really started to try to think about how I could flip what was happening in terms of these constraints and demonstrate to my students, not only through my teaching, but my practice as an artist, that I could continue to make work despite the fact that I didn't have much on hand or that I was essentially sheltering in place. You guys with me so far? Right? Okay. And so my bodies of work that I have produced have been explorations of the world around me, looking at things like foraging for my environment in order to make work, looking for still lifes in my neighborhood, and rebuilding things in my home that I had let decay in some way, including a backyard studio that had been a building that had been falling apart in my backyard that we decided to try to renovate so that we could have an outdoor space, and things in my kitchen. So I started making work as it started as an example for my 7th graders. And then I just kept pushing it and pushing it. So what can I do with water and ice? What can I do with my leftover food waste? What can I do with materials that I find that I'm foraging to make food for my family? And how is it that these things can be symbols for like the space that I'm currently in, you know, being frozen in time essentially, and not having the ability to continue to be present for my students in the way that I could previously. So I think I'm rambling, so you guys can, so my work, yeah, right now I've been focusing on making photographs, making my own ink, making sculptural objects that I then document in photography. And then I do daily paintings with the ink that I make that I don't really show yet because I don't know where they're going. But the daily paintings that I do are a way for me to process various things that are going on. So I'll just read what I wrote and then I'll just end it there because I feel like I'm rambling. But cooking and painting with my own ink is cathartic. Acorn ink is a beautiful silvery gray. I've been painting abstractions of waves as a meditation for 2 years since my father died. This ink feels like the embodiment of all my grief, from parental death, climate crisis, the pandemic, the rise of fascism, and the denial of this, it should say the spread of white supremacy in our country and in the communities that I live and work in. Grief gives us awareness. Grief lets us know we care. Grief has become a lifeline for me as much as joy. I sit with my grief, paint, and find solace and action in its abrasion, like waves of a hurricane waking me up. And that is kind of where I am right now as an artist. I hope it wasn't too much.
It was great. I really
Okay.
like that. And I just really like how you're sort of showing the possibility of art even under quarantine isolation, of like, it's not even just doing digital art, but like using as little resources as you can to build something beautiful or something that's critical. I really enjoyed that myself, and hopefully our attendees enjoyed it too. And then our last showcase will be Nared, and then we'll go to open discussion. You can
All
share
right.
your screen when you're ready.
One second. Okay, let me know when you see it. We're gonna try this again. Okay.
Your desktop is now visible.
Alrighty. So I'm gonna hop out of my PowerPoint. Okay. So welcome. I'm excited to be here tonight. Again, as Kana mentioned, and as I stated earlier, my name's Ty. I am one of the owners of Meraki Montessori, and my husband Dell is the other co-owner. Here is our team. Everything that we do was inspired by our daughter Adele. We started to learn about the Montessori philosophy when we sent her to her childcare center last year, right before COVID hit. And I'm in the middle. My background before becoming a content creator and toy maker, if you will, was in the nonprofit realm. Amid COVID, resigned from my position full-time at Do Space as a volunteer coordinator to sort of take care of family and then just focus on entrepreneurial efforts. And then to the right is my husband, Dell. He works in diversity, inclusion, and equity at UNL. And he is also the wood craftsman behind a lot of the toys that we create. So our mission is quite simple. Our mission really is to create a line of toys that are handcrafted, eco-friendly, sustainable, and engaging for families to encourage and inspire imagination and exploration through the Montessori outlook. And we wanted to create toys that were beautiful and made children imagine the endless possibilities of their vision. We get to see a lot of this through our daughter, Adele. So what I want to kind of do right now is just move away from the PowerPoint and jump into our website. I'm gonna see if I can, there we go. Okay, so this is our website. We are going to go to our shop page. So all of the items that you see here were designed and created by myself and my husband. I do a lot of my creations and sketches in Illustrator. But one of the things that I kind of want to highlight is our Melanin Mood collection. It features these palette puzzles here. If it'll go, there we go. So with these palette puzzles, we want to really show diversity and representation in a lot of our work. So with our Melanin Mood collection, it features palettes as such, showing, different skin tones of minorities. There aren't a lot of Black toy makers, so we want to show children the endless possibilities of being a creator. I'm just gonna kind of scroll. These are a couple of the other items that we create. We have quite a few. But in addition to our Melanin collection, we have a collection of American Sign Language items. One of my favorite happens to be our tiles. These are our math tiles, for example, but it's just teaching children in whatever language, works best for them. Our goal is to be inclusive in everything that we do and have something for everyone. And then these are just some more of our items. Hopefully here soon, we've been a little bit busy with the holidays, we can publicly put out our native collection. We have been working with friends who teach on reservations and have created items for them. Throughout this whole experience, just with COVID and everything, it's been nice to have conversations that we would not have had with others, whether that's just learning more about their culture, language, who they are, what they do. It's just been nice talking to all the minority communities that we've been talking to. And I think that is like the major points. I just wanted to kind of show you my family, the work that we're doing, and yeah. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much. And for just so everyone knows, I put all our panelists' websites in the chat If you came here later, you might not see them, but I can repost anyone's links if they're needed, and various articles that I found during it. If any of the panelists want to post extra articles or links, feel free. At this point, we're going to move to open discussion. And honestly, I think your presentation sort of already highlighted prompts, and I kind of figured they were going to anyways, because COVID is going to impact everything all the artists are going to do in Omaha. There's not going to be any of you that are not impacted. So the first prompt I have here, and from here we can sort of go in whatever direction we like for the discussion, whatever y'all want. What has the impact of COVID been on yourself as a creator? What do you feel the impact has been on sort of the broader arts community, general community, things like that? And you can also incorporate other prompts as you want for our panelists and drive the discussion wherever you like, and I'll try to facilitate along the way.
Okay, so as far as impact on me as a creator, I'm gonna say that I am a digital artist, like I mentioned before, and while that is fairly cut and dry in that like most of my means of production that I currently own are kind of at home with me. I have the privilege of being able to have my studio items I use for my practice. I already have those things at home. And while you would think that it would make creating art in a pandemic easier, because like, oh, it's right there, it's really not. I feel like most artists that kind of work from home can say that for sure. This year, just from working on middle spaces, among other things, working it through everything in the pandemic has made things so much more difficult. Not even just not being able to meet in person, but communication-wise, patience, a number of things that we've come to, a lot of soft skills that we've come to value now in a pandemic are becoming much, much more necessary. And in particular, like an impact it's had on me as a creator, surprisingly positively. I've had a lot more support this year. And my career is still very like early or very young, I guess. But I've had a lot of support this year, much more than I can say I've ever had previously. And maybe that distracted my career, but I feel like also the pandemic has created an environment for people to be much more giving and also forgiving of each other, and a lot more supportive of people like artists, people who are kind of working on their own and who need that support, need that extra little bit of time or care in creating their crafts or just surviving.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. It's like playing a No, Tiana, I agree with a lot of what you said. One interesting thing that I wanted to bring up was when we started doing some of our creative work towards the beginning of COVID, it was crazy. There was a shortage in a lot of the materials that we used, and there were delays in things online. For instance, we use certain like Cricut machines, if you will, to cut like stickers and everything. And it just seemed like sort of with the pandemic and quarantining, I was just seeing a lot of friends and family, getting Cricut makers, and those supplies in store were sort of dwindling. And then we kind of hit a wall online when it came to certain supplies that we needed, and order times being super extended. So that was something that was unique to navigate, if you will. And for us in our realm, with a lot of the items that we like to showcase, in the beginning of COVID, there weren't a lot of in-person events and interacting. So building that credibility, has been quite an interesting yet fun task, I guess you could say, of exposing people to who we are, what we do, and what we create. So I'm not sure if any of you had experience with that, because some of you, I think most of you all were established prior to the pandemic, but that was something that was tricky for us, is, having that credibility during the pandemic and people not being able to touch, see, and feel our items.
I can speak to that as well, really quick. I don't take up time for anybody else, but I definitely have that issue as well. Like I had mentioned a little bit earlier, before I had this online store, which I started in literally this year, like January. I was selling art at like mostly events, Ben First Fridays, a lot of places where you kind of just go, sell your art, put up a table, stuff like that. That's kind of where I made most of my income selling my products. And I knew for a fact that once COVID came, that income that I received from those like events was gonna be gone completely. Not simply because the events are no longer happening, but because the transition to online is it's so different than purchasing, holding, being able to kind of see something in person versus wanting to having an urge or having an interest in purchasing it online. It's just a completely different environment where people are you would think people would be much more proactive to spend because it's online. Online shopping is such a thing that people do, but it makes things so much more complicated. So I definitely can agree to like I didn't have established my brand or anything before the pandemic, but doing that now, I can imagine that's gonna be a very difficult task, especially for small businesses.
I just posted this prompt for our panelists. The attendees won't be able to see this, but since we're already sort of talking about the changes in support and also like the kind of money you can get in, the kind of resources you can get, I sort of posted the second prompt. So I'll mention some of those questions out loud for our attendees. What do you feel are the dynamics of support you receive online versus in person and local interactions, successes and challenges in finding support for creative work? And what are some like really impactful moments of support or opportunities you've had as a creator, especially if they've happened in 2020, but you can mention older things. There was history before 2020, correct? and Jody and Allegra, if y'all want to say anything about the previous prompts or whatever you like, feel free.
Yeah, I think what I want to say kind of touches on both of these prompts right now. I think, well, I started working in collaboration with the sound artist here, Alex Jacobson, and we had a show up at the Amplify Arts Generator space in May. And so we were working for like half a year on creating this kind of immersive installation with dancers, and we would be performing there in the space, and we would invite people to come in and like walk around this whole installation at the generator space. But then COVID hit, and of course, like in May especially too, like there's no way that we were going to be able to invite people in. So we changed everything to be virtual and online. And it was really great that Amplify gave us the opportunity to actually continue with this project that we had put so much energy into, but it really made us like rethink everything we had already planned. We just we installed in the space, but we made it like a window exhibit so you could see it from the outside. But the whole idea was that it was immersive and that you could walk through it and that it would be there live as well. And so this recent show of mine, I kind of ran into the same things where I thought it was going to have to be completely virtual at some point, and I was super bummed about that. But again, Amplify really pulled through, and they hadn't been using their like a small room in their office building, so they let me use that spot, and people were actually able to come into the space to see it through making reservations. And that was actually a really interesting dynamic, because I would go in and open the space for each person that made a reservation. And if it were to be like that at a normal opening or whatever, like I wouldn't be able to speak with all of my friends or all of the people that came to see the work, but this changed things in a really beautiful way where I was able to have like a one-on-one conversation with each person that came through, and especially with a show that's so based in like like research and archives, it really helped to kind of like give the full spectrum of the idea of the show to be, and really have nice one-on-one conversations and face-to-face, which I haven't I mean, probably not many of us have had for this past year now.
To your second question, Kana, I'd like to share about some of the community support that we've been given. We were introduced to a couple of awesome groups. We were introduced to Made in Omaha, Love the Locals, and then the Local Girl Gang. And we are part of the Love the Locals virtual holiday market, but it's been such a great experience. We've gotten to know so many cool artists, creators, and creatives. And they've really done a great job at supporting all of the creators that are a part of their virtual market this year, which has been really nice being a new business. I've always done content creation, but now more public facing. And then we are in a few Made in Omaha stores. So that's been really nice that organizations, or I guess businesses like Made in Omaha, are giving artists and creators a platform to showcase their work in person. And then the Local Girl Gang is a Instagram account that I follow, but they are very big on collaboration and the sharing of information. So it's an account that I'd highly suggest everyone check out, but they've been really awesome as well with the sort of like digital conversations or virtual conversations that we've all had to have instead of in person. So yeah.
Will you put the Instagram in the chat?
Yes, I will do that right now.
Thanks, Ty. I think I'll just respond to both questions really quickly. How do I wrap this together? So, I had a couple of shows get canceled because of COVID and rescheduled, and that was really emotionally hard. And that happened about the same time that I lost, within the same month that I lost what for me is my daily being, right? Like my day job of teaching is very important to me. And so, that was I took a couple of weeks where I was just really, eating chips on the couch. Like it was not pretty. And then I really tried to start to think about how I could flip my thinking about the situation. And my spouse and I decided that we were going to treat this all like an ongoing artist residency in our homes, and not really like, social media or talk about it, but just internally take this as an opportunity to really do all the things that we've ever talked about that we have never done because we're workaholics, and all the projects that maybe, we've tabled, like evaluate them and see where we can go with them. And then just be really open to vulnerability and trying new things. And that has turned out to be the best thing for me from this whole process. I mean, it's part of why I'm here. I'm not one that's very, I work in Omaha, I teach at UNO, but I'm very insular in the local community with my practice. I tend to show my work elsewhere. And I just decided, that I wanted this whole cocooning process to be an opportunity to do what really happens in a cocoon, right? There's some kind of metamorphosis that occurs. So, that's been really exciting because I've been working on that. And then, I'll age myself here because, I'm not super active on Instagram, and I have a teenager that is, and I said, okay, I'm going to go on this thing and see what I can find and start to build communities and connect with people that are in other places. And, that was something new for me. And I've started to make relationships, and through that, this amazing thing happened where I got connected with this curatorial group in London. And, I was in this exhibition, and then we did this talk much like this, where there was a woman from Canada, a woman from London, and little old me from Council Bluffs, Iowa. And it was just really amazing, right? And I would have never had that happen if all of this new way of interacting hadn't emerged. So, you know, I don't know if you guys have had similar experiences, or you talked a little bit about it, Allegra, in terms of flipping your perspective on how to view a work of art. But I'm really excited for how we will continue to develop human relationships and connectivity as we move forward. Because I think this has taught us that we desperately need that, you know, and we have all this technology, but I feel as if this pandemic and, you know, the public dialogue finally happening deeply in our country, you know, is this opportunity to use these tools in really innovative ways out of all of these crises. And I guess I'm just kind of curious if you guys have had any similar I don't know if it's an epiphany, but any similar things go on with you in terms of changing how you think about connecting to others.
Yeah, I've had really interesting connections through social media or just like more eyes on my work in a different way, you know. I've been able to do a few collaborations with different friends here in Omaha. And I think a lot of that was sort of fueled by or through social media. And yeah, but with that question of like human interaction, I think social media is doing something really interesting right now, where it's like making us all very aware of societal issues, and we can kind of share information in a really fast, immediate way. Even like when the protests were happening here in Omaha, right? The information was like flowing so fast, and mainly through Instagram or Facebook. But I think for me, at least, there's still sort of like lacking a deep, genuine connection. And I'm trying to find like the balance between that right now, where like I think we can use social media as a tool, but for me at least, it can't be like the only way that I'm communicating and sharing my work.
I've had a very unique experience in that I'll say from like the beginning of my career, my work has mostly been in the space of social media and the internet. So it wasn't until about, I would say this year, with Reductive Middle Spaces, that I've had a large physical work. In my physical, I mean like in the real world, and not on social media. And my experience has been unique in that like, it almost feels, I definitely know there's more interaction happening, more genuine conversations happening now, but I've always kind of had my work and kind of communicate with people in this way. It just wasn't until this year that I started to see my stuff was actually starting to be seen more. Like just by using social media, and by interacting with people and supporting other people's work as they support yours, you create more genuine relationships and interactions. But surprisingly enough, this year has shown me another side of social media that has become more real, like more like physical, I guess, not a little bit physical, but you know, so to speak, because there's another, like I mentioned a lot of events I participated in. So another event that happened a couple times a year, it's called Drawing While Black. And artists, illustrators can use this hashtag and post their art, Black artists. And from there, I've made so many like connections with other people to the point where like you like Discord, people made Discord groups where a lot of us Black artists have gotten together, and we kind of just like there's been a time where we do like a Zoom meeting. We all just like sat there and played like games like Among Us, like you know a lot of like kind of virtual games, stuff like that, just to like hang out. Like that's kind of created more and built more relationships with people that you usually just see like icons and usernames on the internet would be real people behind them. And that has been like a really unique experience for me, in that social media has actually kind of started like rather than me reaching out to social media, for things, social media started reaching back. So like I mentioned before, where I had gotten this iPad, it was like essentially crowdfunded in like a number of days. That's like another example, I would say, of me reaching out and then these things reaching back to me, the opportunities coming back to me from Nared on social media. This year has been very unique in that, like I said before, people are more giving and forgiving. And I feel like in my practice, I can say in my experience as an artist that I've um, achieved a lot of that or been granted a lot of that from others. A lot of these like really unique and genuine relationships and experiences.
You had some amazing nuggets I wrote down. Giving and forgiving, reaching back. I'm like, that's such a great capture of that humanness that you were talking about, Allegra. Like,
Yeah, and exactly what Tiana was saying, like yeah, social media is kind of like breaching the barrier now of like making things possible in the real world or in the physical realm. It doesn't just stay on the Instagram page or like in your feed, you know, there's opportunities to yeah, to bring it out into like the 3D world.
your toys, Ty, are like, they're amazing. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, how can we get these in classrooms in I won't say what district I work for, in districts, right? I'm an independent artist, not associated with a district. But, you know, I just see so much potential for, I'm wondering, let me rephrase that. What kind of social media campaigns have you done for your company in this time? And has there been a shift? I'm starting to moderate. Tell me to be quiet.
You're fine. I believe in like open and collaborative facilitation. So you are all
Okay,
good.
sweet.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Jody. It's been an interesting learning experience for my husband and I. So my degree is in PR and advertising. So I'm all in like over the website, which I built, and in the marketing and such. Well, we got busy really quickly and we've been wearing multiple roles. So I do some of the craftsmanship behind our items as well as my husband on bigger things. So we're trying to marry marketing and then doing, you know, a lot of the work ourselves, because it's going places rather quickly that we couldn't have even thought or imagined. But that is something that we plan to work on in the new year, starting in January, is focusing, like you mentioned, on, you know, more marketing efforts. We're trying to just get through the holiday season at this point. But that's an interesting thing that I want to bring up too, is that it's been tricky trying to play multiple roles because I am so creative brained. So sometimes like uploading the website or social media, I forget because I just fall in love with creating. And I don't know if any of you have ever dealt with that, but sometimes my husband will be like, I've noticed you haven't posted on Instagram recently, or updated the website with new product photos, because I'm always creating and thinking of new toys. It's almost like when you buy a new car, you keep seeing that same car, like literally going into any store. I'm like, oh, that's an interesting toy. Now, how can I, you know, like recreate something similar, but in our own way? And our goal right now is to really talk to minority communities about the Montessori philosophy, because I really think it could be so beneficial for children in minority communities. So there's more that's coming. That was a long answer. I get to talking, but
Also, I will say this, we had sort of a quick discussion in the chat on all the panels might have seen. So officially the event ends at 7:30. However, we have a little bit of leeway where we can extend the discussion for panels who would like. They are welcome to leave at this point whenever they like until I have to end it at 7:55 at the latest. So yeah, whatever discussion we like, I told attendees they're welcome to send questions. I haven't seen one yet, and I added another prompt if folks want to do it or continue whatever discussion you already want to, or ask each other questions, whatever you like.
Oh, I'm not on mute. I'm raising my hand like I'm in a classroom.
It's all good, whatever you need to do.
I have questions for the other three panelists. What do you all think about collaboration? And is collaboration something that you are interested in doing? And in what ways, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So collaboration was actually funny. Something on my bucket list for 2020 that I came up with before, the pandemic. But that was something that I have always wanted to do as far as collaborating with other artists. In my particular art discipline, collaboration is not necessary for my creation. So I'm sort of used to doing this on my own and creating on my own. But I've always wanted to do work with a group and create work with other people, other artists. Kind of working in tandem like that has always been something ideal for me. I'll definitely look forward to opportunity to collaborate with other artists, even despite the pandemic.
Yeah, for me, especially starting like last year, maybe, collaboration's been super important. I feel like there's a lot of openness too in the Omaha community to collaborate. And like in comparison to when I lived in Boston, there's a lot of like competition, really unnecessary competition, even between friends. And here I feel kind of the opposite of that. It's like a lot of people are just lifting each other up and really wanting to, work with kind of a cross-disciplinary and with each person kind of making their magic in their own way, and then coming together to make something bigger than the sum of its parts, right? And I think with the prompt that Kana shared here, I feel like that's where art could go in the future, especially if we are more reliant on the internet and on social media. I think there's like really amazing opportunities to collaborate across the nation or internationally. Like now we don't really need to, we're all getting a lot more used to Zooming and things like this, right? Where we don't need to actually be in a physical place with other collaborators to make it happen.
So for a long time, I collaborated with my spouse, and then I had a second child, and it just became so incredibly difficult to do it all. And we both decided that we wanted to separate artistic practice because we wanted to have individual identities as artists. And that's kind of what I've done for almost, I guess, 9 years. My younger child is 9. And I, in the last year, have really wanted to start connecting again to a community, because art making has been, I teach all day, I teach some more, I get the kids to bed, and then I have an hour to myself. And I've really valued that process, but it also has started to feel insular and lonely. And I think that was also heightened in this cocooning process. And so one of my goals for 2021 is to try to take the risk of connecting in new ways that I haven't been doing. And that's also partly because my younger child's now old enough, that I'm not needed all the time, if that makes sense. So, I'm super open to collaboration and seeing what happens when conversations start, right? For me, the longest time was also trying to figure out how to have conversations when I'm in this lifestyle of, teacher, faculty, mother, and artist between 10 and midnight, so, but yeah, I really, and honestly, the other thing is I collaborate all day long, right? With my young ones. And so I'm all about fostering their voice during the day? How can I be their artist assistant, right? It's very much about student-centered approaches. So sometimes I'm trying to balance, I'm sure you guys, if you are ever teaching or parenting, or you get me. I love my kids, but
I
so
totally get it, especially being a new mom. It's been interesting balancing starting a new business amid a pandemic and then parenting our 1-year-old. I'm sure Kana knows I'm at Do Space quite often, and she's always with me on my hip.
She's very well behaved, the most well behaved baby. She's so quiet. She barely does anything. It's great.
Well, that makes me happy. But Do Space, I will say, I know that was one of the questions we talked about, has been very influential for us because it almost reminds me of like a Costco on a Saturday. Like the 3D lab is like a taste tester of all the greatest machines. And more recently, just after using some of Do Space's machines in the 3D lab, we've ordered some of our own. So I just go there occasionally, I think just to see people. But that Do Space has been very influential since they've opened back up in allowing us to use a 3D lab, learn even more about the machine so that we can bring them in our own workshop here at home. So I'm thankful to Do Space for that. And if any of you panelists have not been into the 3D lab, you should totally reserve some time. You could do some really cool stuff in there.
To look at one of the questions that were proposed initially, like what are some most impactful moments of support opportunities received as a creator? I want to pose that question. I think that's one is we're getting toward the end, could end our presentation on a high note possibly, but 2020 for me, if I haven't communicated that already, has been a really like transformational year and very, very positive in my experience. Like with my online store, and with Middle Spaces kind of being my first, I guess, big break, so to speak. And with me getting more opportunities in like comics and other work I had not done before. This year in itself has been so like such extremes I've experienced with like ups and downs, and not necessarily not just in my career, but in life in general. It's been such an, I don't know if any artists can say they've been relatively untouched by the pandemic, by COVID and everything that's been caused by that. But it's been a year of extremes in my case, and a very transformational, but also life-changing, I guess, so to speak, year. And I mean both positives and negatives. But for you guys, what have your experiences been with this year? But also like examples of support and stuff like that as a creator and opportunities.
Tiana, I feel like you are like I'm on the same wavelength as you. I really feel like COVID pushed me to really walk into my purpose. I usually am like, okay, I need to, like I said, I come from the nonprofit realm. So I'm always like, all right, I'm gonna work an 8 to 5. All right, I'm gonna just do that. But stepping out on our own and being able to allow my creative juices to flow and to create this business has been so awesome for me and so soul serving. But as a creative, 2020 has been something that has been like a muse to me in my creative thinking, I guess. I'm such an empath and I'm so empathetic towards everything that's going on. And so trying to turn that anxiety of the unknown into art has been very influential for me. So anytime that I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much racial tensions going on, there's so much going on with politics and this virus, like how can I, create something through all of this? And so it's been, really inspiring to create and build something during this time. And then a lot of the support, like I said, Love the Locals has been awesome with helping us get more information out about who we are. And then the Local Girl Gang because of collaboration, and then Made in Omaha. But it's really important for us because there are not many, if any, Black toy makers. And that's something that we want to spend the rest of our time on earth doing, I guess, is being toy makers and creators.
I'm gonna pop in really quick and say, it's a toy maker. You should see Jingle Jangle on Netflix if you haven't seen that already. It's a movie about a toy maker. Yeah, so if you haven't seen that, definitely go see that.
Totally watched it one night when I was painting. I feel like that. And it's so funny because in the movie, he went through some hard times personally. And I feel like a lot of us are going through many challenges during this time. And I feel like him, the pandemic lit a fire in me. Like, life is so precious, so fragile. Do what you love if you can.
I think that's a great point. I think we all had time to reflect when lockdown kind of started, right? Or at least I did. I reflected on a lot, like what am I choosing? Where am I choosing to spend my time, and where am I choosing to kind of exert energy, and even in the form of thoughts and everything. And I really like what Jody said of like thinking of all of this as a residency at home. I totally did the same thing because when the union's studios shut down, they've been back up for the past few months, but they did close for a couple of months. Like the artist studios, the rest of the union is closed all year. But that was really tough for me. It was really hard to just kind of stay on top of all of my projects and like actually get to work sitting at home, like when I could just decide to stay in bed instead, or like watch movies, you know. So kind of flipping the way of thinking, of just being like, okay, well, I'm in a residency, I'll get up and start getting to work on whatever I want to be really focusing on and spending my energy. That's been super helpful. And of course, yeah, it's like the two extremes always at the same time. Like really amazing things are happening at the same exact time that really horrible things are happening. It's just kind of choosing where to put your focus, I guess. Yeah.
I guess I feel like I have to chime in like I'm at school, like it's my turn to talk. I need to talk now. But I'm curious, Ty, this phrase that you said, walk into my purpose, is that from something, or is that just your brilliance?
So I am a poet and writer by nature. I recently took my blog down, but I was a mental health blogger. And that's one of the lines that I used in my blog because I had some tragedies when I was finishing college. And I just needed something to pull me out of that dark place. And I just remember just hearing, like this walk into your purpose, and yeah, that's kind of where that came from.
Well, now I'm waiting for the book. And so that's the next thing for that, because I was like writing it down really fast. What? That's it. That is such a beautiful phrase, and it connects to me because walking became kind of one of my sanities. I made myself get out of the house twice a day and walk. And now it's become part of my practice. And this polarization between like dumpster fire and, amazing revelations. I went to my garden and I started this thing called hygge culture. I don't even know how to say it right. It's like you stack all your debris and then you put soil on it. And it's like this way of making a raised bed. And my kale was like freaking out this weekend, growing in the middle of like cold. And so I photographed it and put it on my Facebook. It's so cheesy, but I was like, dumpster fire is no longer my image of 2020. It's this damn resilient kale. Like, I'm going to be this kale. And I like jokingly said, be the kale, people, be the kale. And, but it's, it's a matter of choice. Yeah, the dumpster fire is still going on back here, but I have my little kale plant like talking to me. And, the walking into the purpose is such a great metaphor for also walking to what is the positive, right?
I think as creatives, I know just in my realm, coming from a single parent home and being one of a first generation college student, I loved art and activity. Like I said, in high school, I was like this poet. I thought I was like Maya Angelou, Langston Hughes. But my family was very big on education because that was your way out. So I kind of let my creativity like dormant. And I think like when I mentioned that walking in purpose, this pandemic was just like, look at how fragile life is. And I was like, I don't want to continue on just, working for someone else if I know that I have it in me to create full time. And for me now, it's creating a legacy for my daughter, because this is all inspired by her. So, yeah, I just think sometimes as creatives, it's like, do you want to be a starving artist, or like, do you want to work? Like, it's always trying to balance, working to make a living, to be able to sustain ourselves, and then, being a starving artist, I guess. I hope that makes sense.
I really like the point Jody made about being kale. It reminds me much of Tupac Shakur's "The Rose That Grew from Concrete." So I think the goal for this year, 2020 and 2021 and years beyond, is as artists, be the kale that grew from the dumpster fire.
I think the dumpster fire is a very common symbol I've been seeing all over every little Facebook group, every Twitter, the memes out there. So I'm going to end this at 7:55 at the latest. If any of y'all have some final thoughts, shout outs you want to make, now's the time. And thank you so much for being part of this panel. This has been a great time. And I knew I could trust you all in like work, discussing directly with each other and sort of building off of each other. That was something I kind of expected coming into this, because you're all professional artists, and I was correct to think that. And so thank you so much.
I just want to start by saying I'm grateful. Thank you, Do Space, for giving us this platform to share from our perspective. All of my fellow panelists, you are awesome. I think we have each other's info, but I'd love if you all would put it in the panelist chat, your info, because my mind is running and I'd love to connect with you after this. So thank you, Kana, for allowing me to be a part and Do Space.
Yeah, I agree. Thank y'all so much. This was like a really awesome opportunity. I always wanted to do a panel. I find very often that whenever people are invited to do panels, especially as a Black woman, it has to do with being Black or something to do with other identities of mine that are constantly coming into question or being criticized. So it was really fun to be able to do a panel about something not easy, because we're talking about being artists during COVID, but something that we can all speak on and relate to in our own different have our own different experiences with. So this is really fun to do. Thanks, because this is my first ever panel. So this is super cool. It's really fun. And I will put my information in the chat.
Yeah, this is great. I really enjoy hearing everybody's different perspectives on the same year too, and I'm super inspired by all of your work. I would love to stay in contact in whatever way possible. I feel like we have some really interesting shared things among us as well. So yeah, speaking of collaboration, I'm always down, like I said. Let's stay in contact. Oh, and thanks to Space and Kana. It's been great. It's really awesome.
And I'll just say ditto. But truly thankful. You know, this is the first time in several years that I have kind of reached out this way in Omaha, and it's just been absolutely lovely. And I'm super excited to stay connected to you guys. And Kana, I'll send a thank you to, I assume, Andy, right? I don't know who put my name to you guys.
I was not part of the Amplify Arts connection, but Allison will definitely find that for you. Absolutely.
And I'm gonna mute again because they're like getting ice cream and it's loud over here, and
No
I'm scared
worries.
you're gonna hear things in my
Anyone
house.
can leave as they want. I mean, you already could. Thank you so much for our attendees who came. Just so you all know, there will be another soda event next month. We don't have the lineup or speaker chosen yet, but we have some ideas, so be on the lookout for that. And we are hoping to have it be a monthly recurring event throughout the next year, whether it's going to be virtual or in person, or if we end up going to hybrid. Who knows? We don't know. No one knows what's going to happen, but we'll try to be prepared for every possibility. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and a really safe week. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kana.
Mm-hmm.